When David Rourke opened his eyes on a cold Thursday morning, he expected to see the gray ceiling of his tiny New York apartment. Instead, he was lying on a steel bed in a dimly lit room, surrounded by humming machines and red lights blinking on a control panel nearby. The walls were metal, and the air had a strange chemical smell. He sat up quickly, heart racing. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The last thing he remembered was falling asleep at his desk after finishing a report on classified Cold War-era experiments. David worked as a digital archivist at a private research facility that had recently obtained declassified government files. His job was to sort through forgotten records, most of them dull, but some so strange he couldn't stop thinking about them. One file in particular, labeled Project Threshold, had stood out. It mentioned something called dimensional slips and experiments on consciousness transfer. The notes were incomplete, heavily redacted, and dismissed as Cold War paranoia. But now, David wasn't in his world anymore. He stepped outside the room and found himself in a facility deep underground. Armed guards patrolled the halls, wearing uniforms that looked like they were from the 1970s but new, crisp, clean, and real. A red and yellow flag hung on the wall, a version of the Soviet flag, but different. There was a globe painted next to it, surrounded by orbiting satellites and what looked like alien symbols. David was caught by the guards almost immediately. They shouted commands in perfect English, but their accents were Russian. They called him a leaper and took him to an interrogation room. A man in a dark suit entered, wearing sunglasses even in the dim light. He introduced himself as Agent Vostrikov, part of the Global Stability Directorate. David was accused of being a spy from the other Earth. At first, David thought it was a dream or some elaborate prank. But as the days passed, he realized this world was not just different, it was terrifyingly stable in a way his world had never been. Here, the Cold War had never ended. The United States and the USSR didn't fall apart or reconcile. Instead, they merged. In this reality, the Cuban Missile Crisis had escalated, but instead of nuclear war, both sides discovered something during their deep space surveillance: signals. Alien transmissions, encoded in a form of mathematics that couldn't be faked. The fear of destruction turned into cooperation. The two superpowers formed a single alliance, not out of peace, but out of mutual survival. They built a united government that monitored everything, everywhere, at all times. They called it the Accord. Technology in this world was advanced, far beyond David's own. Hovering drones, mind interface terminals, and energy weapons were standard. But people lived under constant surveillance. Everyone wore a badge, biometric IDs tied to a central system. There was no internet, no freedom of speech, no public elections. People didn't question it. They were taught from birth that humanity was under silent threat from above. According to Agent Vostrikov, the Accord had been preparing for the return, the moment when the beings behind the original alien transmissions would come back. And they believed David was from one of the splinter Earths, an alternate timeline where the Accord had failed to form. Somehow, his consciousness had been pulled into their dimension. David tried to explain he wasn't a threat. He talked about his world, his job, and how he had read about Project Threshold right before falling asleep. That name changed everything. Vostrikov looked at him for a long moment and then left the room. That night, a woman came to his cell. She said her name was Lena, and she was part of the Shadow Path, a secret resistance movement that believed the Accord was not protecting humanity but enslaving it. She told him the truth. Project Threshold wasn't just a theory here. It was successful. The Accord had created technology to cross into other dimensions, not to escape the aliens, but to find them. According to Lena, the Accord made a deal decades ago. The original alien signal had not been a warning but an invitation. In exchange for global control and access to higher technology, the Accord allowed limited alien presence on Earth. The satellite launches that occurred every year were actually transports. Some humans were taken. Others were replaced. The alien species, never shown to the public, was said to be made of pure energy. They could mimic human thoughts, even human bodies, but only temporarily. Their real purpose was unknown. Some believed they were studying us. Others thought they were terraforming Earth slowly, adjusting it to their needs. David realized he wasn't the first leaper to appear here. The Accord had been watching for dimensional anomalies for years. Most leapers were executed or disappeared. But David was different. He had read the original files in his world. Somehow, that had triggered a connection. His consciousness had been snatched mid-sleep. Lena and the Shadow Path wanted to use him. They believed he could help them prove the existence of other dimensions to the wider public, if they could hijack one of the broadcasting towers. In this world, information was tightly controlled. A live feed of David telling his story from inside a secure facility would cause chaos. Maybe even rebellion. They broke him out during a power outage, staged by insiders. 4 hours, they ran through hidden tunnels beneath the city. David saw things he couldn't explain: tanks shaped like beetles, surveillance towers made of black crystal, and soldiers with glowing eyes, possibly not human at all. They reached the broadcast center. Lena gave him a small device, a sort of portable transmitter. He spoke directly into it, telling the story from the beginning, about his world, the files, the shift, and what he had learned here. It streamed to thousands of terminals before they were shut down. Alarms blared. Drones swarmed. As Lena fought off the soldiers, she gave David one last chance. She handed him a small capsule, pulsing with light. "This is the key," she said. "We stole it from the Accord's portal lab. If your body still exists on your Earth, this might take you back." He pressed it, and woke up. In his bed. In New York. Everything looked normal. His apartment, his phone, the sound of traffic outside. For a moment, he thought it was over. A dream. A hallucination. Then he checked his desk. The file on Project Threshold was gone. The entire folder was missing. When he asked his boss, they said no such file ever existed. His access was revoked the next day. 2 men in suits visited his building but didn't speak to him. They just watched from a car. And that night, as he fell asleep, he heard a soft hum in his ears. A mechanical tone followed by a whisper in a language he didn't understand. The next morning, he found a badge on his table. Not from his world, but from them. The name on it? David Rourke, Class C Leaper, active monitoring required. And on the back, burned into the metal: "They are not coming. They are already here."